TitleMatchNetwork.com.
In WCW, who's your favorite booker up until Bischoff?
In WCW?
Yeah.
God, that's a tough question. They didn't have any good bookers in WCW. They had
all corporate guys like Kip Fry and all.
Yeah, what they had like Jim Hurd.
Right.
Then he was gone. Then they had Kip Fry, who was kind of an off-the-wall attorney, if I remember right. Then they tried. Then that didn't work. So then they tried. They had a committee for a while with Dusty on it and Jim Barnett. Then they tried wrestler things for a while. They brought Bill Watts in.
Right.
And that didn't work. And then they tried to find someone who wasn't a wrestler again, and that's what kind of Bischoff weaseled his way in there. The only thing Eric had going for him, unlike the Turner people who didn't have a clue, and Bill Watts, who was a complete egotistical asshole, Bischoff hung around wrestling for a while, had an idea, but Eric was smart enough to pick the brains of certain guys.
Right.
He picked my brain a little bit. He talked to someone else that he knew. He was smart enough. He was smart enough to use the knowledge and ask other people for a while, and then he got too smart and lost control of the whole thing.
When he actually came into power, you knew him from AWA. What were your thoughts on him?
It kind of surprised me. The weird part was I was there when he was going after that job. It was him and some other people was going after the job of I don't know if they called it the executive producer or something else. When I heard of it, and I knew he was trying to get it, and I know where Eric came from.
Right.
And the other guys that were trying to get this job, to me, I thought it had to do with the production end, maybe, more or less, the camera people or the buildings or it didn't dawn on me that this guy would wind up in supreme control of the booking. It's too bad nowadays they call it writing and they have writers. Writers is a cancer. Wrestling is not a show that works like that. And these people, Vince doesn't care, he's beyond it. Hopefully that the people at TNA will realize no matter how good you are at business, licensing, marketing, television deals, whatever, your booking is the heart and soul of your product. If you don't have a booker who knows the business, you're going to spin your wheels and spend your money. And WCW really never had any. Eric came in, and he smart enough to listen. He had this idea in his mind of the invasion thing, which was a great idea that was talked about before,
right? And
was able to pull it off. And again, success. I discovered in this world, whether it's wrestling or business, it normally has to do with being the idiotic luck out guy who's in the right place at the right time. Ole and some other people were in there when Turner said you can do this. When Bischoff, got the job, Turner, for some reason, I don't know why, maybe Vince pissed him off, let go a lot of money. Turner at that particular time said, I want a 2-hour show Monday night opposite McMahon. I want to go after this business,
right,
and I'm releasing millions of dollars. The other promoters didn't have the money to work with. Bischoff wound up in a position at the right time when Turner wanted to do this. So Bischoff had the ability to say, hey, look, Diesel, we'll be able to pay you this much and get you from Vince. So we had the ability to finally do what Vince did to other promoters.
Right.
Offer some guys money that the people before didn't have. If Turner would have came in and said nothing, Bischoff would have been there a year and then there would have been some other guy in there.
Right.
But he was in the right time when Turner wanted to fight.
Do you think that with the veterans, the wrestlers that have been around for so long, when they heard that Ted Turner wants to go opposite of Vince on live TV, and they knew that Bischoff was going to be in charge, most of the veterans think that Bischoff was getting in way over his head. Did they think he was going to fail? I mean, did you think that WCW could really pull it off? I mean, when I first heard just as a fan, I was like, this is crazy.
Oh, you know what? I knew, I felt the opposite. when we got things going, I mean, Bischoff was there at the right place at the right time. But then we were able to do this because Turner wanted it done. But once it got started, as far as I was concerned, because I knew the business, and Eric was there who listened to people, and Turner wanted to do it, and our ratings were going, and everything was getting big, there was no doubt in my mind that not only would it succeed, there's no doubt in my mind it should still be going on today in 2006. It was so big and so over, and not only was it great with the New World Order, we also had a scenario set up to take it further. We had what you need to make the thing work. We had a babyface hero the people loved in position, which was Goldberg. All we had to do was build up bad guys, feed them to Goldberg. You had the same formula that Bruno had when it worked. You had the same formula Hogan had when it worked. You had the same formula Austin had when it worked. We had everything. There was no doubt in my mind that we should still be going. It was like, again, destiny. Or who would have thought that would have gotten out of control because Eric made some mistakes, and some other people did too. But then, who would have even thought at that time Turner would have sold all his power to not so much Time Warner, but the AOL. AOL just didn't want it.
Right.
And who would have thought that after being on TBS, one of the best rated shows for 30 years, some computer idiotic nerd jerk-offs were stupid enough to come in. I don't know why Ted would ever sell it, not that you're stupid, Ted, but my God. And they just canceled everything. And then they had years and years and years and years of tapes that they gave to Vince for peanuts. It was the most
ridiculous,
unheard thing, and I kind of like went into shock. And then when I saw other things happen, like then Eric was replaced by some accountant who brought Russo in that thought he was going to save the day, and
didn't Vince buy the library for like $400,000 or something?
$2.5 million or something. It might have been it might as well have been a penny.
Right.
I mean, you're talking 30 years of programming, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of classic, unbelievably stupid.
As a person,
who would have thought?
As a person who works at a video company, that's the most ridiculous thing I was. Unbelievable.
It's so ridiculous you wouldn't have thought of it. You would never, when WCW was hot, how would you ever think, hey, in 2 years, AOL's going to cancel this?
Right.
It wouldn't even enter your mind.
Going back to like the Monday Night War with Bischoff and all that, do you think that was kind of like cheap heat when he was like challenging Vince to fights and then giving out the finishes to the matches on TV? Was there ever a point did you go, this is too much, or did you think deep down it was good? Or
my thought on it, I'm very professional. I'm for business. The thing that made WCW real hot and it was the fact there was a war going on, and I thought the war was great, but there's still a code as far as I'm concerned. I mean, to stoop to the point of exposing, that's because they were doing like one taped and one. I don't know. Well, I guess, but see, McMahon was doing cool stuff too. They had like the DX blow up the CNN Center. I mean, McMahon did some cool stuff, and we did cool. But that's what made everybody hot. Was the war the best thing for TNA? And it'll probably get there as long as things go the way they go and they keep going. It would be, head up Monday nights, and I think that we're going prime time, and that should be the next step. We'll see what happens.
How important do you really think that undercard was to Nitro's success?
I think it was good. It wasn't the success. People, I hope TNA gets this. I've been trying to tell them this too. People don't pay to watch wrestling matches. People pay to watch stars. You've got to make stars. They don't give a damn if you do a Hurricanrana or a flip out. They're flipped out. They've seen more bumps, more planned spots,
It's the same car crash every week.
Yeah, it's the same. People pay to see stars. So, what you've got to know, and that's what the system of booking and programming was. You were programmed and booked in a certain way to make you a star, not to make an exciting, fast match, because people don't care. All they care about is the end. Are you going to motivate them to come back next month?
Right. When Russo came over to WCW, do you think he was just in over his head?
Well, you know what? I didn't know if Russo was in over his head. I just knew everything we worked for was getting killed.
Right.
I don't think Russo was in over his head because he was one of the guys that kind of formulated this system of writing, which is adopted today. What TNA and McMahon does is basically fill in the blanks of their formats, which are the same as they've been 10 years. Now they got, do an entrance, do a skit, do this in ring, and they just fill in different blanks, but it's the same format. Russo wasn't over his head. He just doesn't know. He didn't know. I mean, I think he's a smarter guy now than he was, 10 years ago. But he still don't know.
Well, we did the shoot interview with Russo. We were like, how could you put David Arquette as a champion? And he goes, well, I think it was great. When has WCW ever been on the cover of USA Today with Arquette? And I'm sitting there going,
but that's how they thought. Dave Arquette's on the cover, but our show's canceled.
Yeah, right.
So good go.
And what wrestling fans that are David Arquette's or non-wrestling fans are going to start watching wrestling?
I didn't know who the hell David Arquette is.
I think it was the first time I ever argued with somebody on a shoot interview.
And that movie they made, I tried to find that. How stupid. I mean, they made a lot of mistakes.
Oh, yeah.
Ready to Rumble. Now, wouldn't you think if you had a movie about, you had a Hot Show Nitro, you would call the movie maybe Monday Nitro and make it about Nitro?
Right.
Instead, they go, let's call it Ready to Rumble. That means we got to give a boxing announcer $100,000 to use Ready to Rumble because he says it on a boxing show. But we'll make a wrestling movie with some guy 3 foot tall. Let's give him the. I just wanted to kill him. It was just time. I golf so good. I played on senior pro. I had a good old. I just couldn't take it anymore. Wrestling was banned from my house.
Do you think he ever saw you as a threat since you saw him back at the time when he had no power?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Eric and me talked a lot. And then I programmed the whole thing when me and Eric worked at Match.
Right.
So I built it up. And, he listened and learned from me. Plus, Eric, I didn't want to be what Eric was. If I knew what the job was, I might have went after it more, but I didn't want to really put 20 hours a day in that kind of job. I want to golf a lot. Live happily ever after. I wish I would have done some things different than I did because of how it wound up. But I didn't think I had to because I never thought it would have wound up canceled and got so crummy.
Going back to the Monday Night War with Bischoff and all that, do you think that was kind of like cheap heat when he was challenging Vince to fights and then giving out the finishes to the matches on TV? Was there ever a point did you go, this is too much? Or did you think deep down it was good? Or
my thought on it, I'm very professional. I'm for business. The thing that made WCW real hot and it was the fact there was a war going on. And I thought the war was great. But there's still a code as far as I'm concerned. I mean, to stoop to the point of exposing, that's because they were doing one taped and one. I don't know. Well, I guess, but see, McMahon was doing cool stuff too. They had the DX blow up the CNN Center. McMahon did some cool stuff, and we did cool. But that's what made everybody hot. Was the war the best thing for TNA? And it'll probably get there as long as things go the way they go and they keep going. It would be head up Monday nights, and I think that we're going prime time, and that should be the next step. We'll see what happens.
When they had that summer '98 in the Georgia Dome when Goldberg beat Hogan, and they had all the suits there and everything, did they really think that they were going to take over. WWF was done, and WCW was going to win the war. Or
Well, no one looked at it like the WWF was done.
yeah,
You know,
well, done dominating.
oh yeah, well, it was done dominating.
Yeah.
I don't know if the suits.
Do you think that was the high point?
It was one of them because it was built up to when Goldberg pinned Hogan. For a time, again, you got to realize there was a feeling when Goldberg pinned Hogan, the feeling that night of emotion. I mean, they blew the roof off.
And that was a homegrown WCW creation.
It was the same feeling that you got in Madison Square Garden 20 years before that, that ended.
Right.
That you couldn't get. I mean, this is why I say today, if you do it, you can still get that kind of heat and that kind of pop because people still want to believe. All you've got to do is present it in a believable way. You can still do it. Biggest pop I've heard since me and Bruno in the garden.
What do you remember about the last Nitro before it happened, and how shocked were you when you heard the news that Vince bought it?
Well, you know what? When me and Bobby Heenan, maybe 6 months before the last Nitro and all that,
right.
we left. They called us in. I think Bobby had 2 or 3 months left on his contract, and I had 4 or 5 months left on my contract. And some guys called us up, and they basically said, look, we're going to do this when your contracts are up. But they were kind of kayfabing that they were canceling everything, and Bobby got pissed. And so they paid Bobby off, but Bobby still had like 2 or 3 months to go, but he wouldn't go back and do it. He just quit, took the money and quit.
Huh.
I said, well, look, I tell you what, I got so much, you give me the money, I'll finish up, but then I'm quitting early. They give me that option.
Right.
And so 6 months before my contract was even up, I got paid and I was gone. And I didn't want to hang around because it was painful. It was pain. It was the time when David Arquette was the champion and Russo was the champion, and they're making Goldberg look like a moron. I mean, they just killed it. And then by the time the Vince thing, and they had meetings at this power plant and shit, I wasn't even there.
Okay.
TitleMatchNetwork.com